Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the Coast Star, the official newspaper of the Borough of Belmar, and the Asbury Park Press on January 23rd, 2024, and notice of this meeting was posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building. Take roll call real quick. Councilwoman Donovan?
Here.
Councilman Kinney?
Here.
Mayor Montefusco?
Here.
Councilman Rondanero?
Here.
And Councilman Levis is absent.
Okay, please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence for our troops and their families and our first responders.
And can I add, Don Egley passed away yesterday, longtime owner of John's Pizza King, and so let's all remember his family in our prayers also.
Okay, thank you. Okay, tonight we're starting off with a public hearing on a Green Acres application that we're putting in. And by law, we have to have that hearing, and our engineer, Jim Morris, is here to give us an overview of what this entails. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, members of the governing body, members of the public, administration. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Am I talking loud enough? Great.
I wanted to use the.
Jim, I wonder if you should pivot that so if the public can see that?
Sure.
Great.
Because we have some, we know what
Yeah.
they're talking about.
You guys see, and
No, I want
We have our own, there you go.
I also have some 11 by 17, so you might,
Oh, great.
might find it easier to see these.
Great, thank you.
And I'll put some on the table as well. So I'm handing out 3 maps. One is an existing conditions map, and then the other 2 maps illustrate the proposed park application. Here's an official map. Thank you. So Green Acres is requiring that applications that are due on February 7th hold a public hearing. And at that public hearing, the intent is to present the application, the projects that we're proposing, and at that time also seek public input. So we're certainly here to get your input on what the applications that the borough is proposing at this point. So the first map that I have here in front of you is simply an existing conditions map. The project site is in Cleary Park along the riverfront, and currently, as most people know, there's passive open space. There is a boardwalk that runs along the seawall to a point, and then it converts to a cinder trail. There's also 3 tennis courts, and then there's 3 pickleball courts, a playground, and a bathroom. So that's the existing site. What we're proposing as a Green Acres grant application for park development, and I guess what I should explain is that they have pockets of different applications that are in this funding round. One is park development. They also have acquisition monies, which we're not submitting for stewardship, and then there's also a grant application program for what's known as Jake's Law. And Jake's Law is the second grant application that we're proposing this evening. The first one that's in front of you on this board is that what we're proposing to do is to add 3 more pickleball courts adjacent to the existing 3 pickleball courts. So some time ago, one of the tennis courts was converted to 3 pickleball courts. What we're proposing to do is to add 3 more, so you have a total of 6 pickleball courts and 3 tennis courts at Cleary Park. And that's, in essence, the grant application. And in addition to adding the pickleball courts, what we're proposing is to extend the boardwalk westerly and terminate it at the corner of the bulkhead, so that we would basically take and extend the boardwalk further so that you have a continuous boardwalk along the riverfront. And that's a park development application, grant application that we are proposing and presenting this evening. The second application, as I mentioned earlier, is on the third page of your handout, which is the Jake's Law application. So what we're proposing is, and what I should explain is Jake's Law was signed into law, I think, in 2023 by Governor Murphy, and the intent is to have completely inclusive playgrounds for our youth. What does that mean? Essentially what it means is that we always have to provide for Americans with Disability Act facilities at our recreation facilities. The Jake's Law part of this application is that above and beyond ADA requirements, there are new standards that the DCA has put forward as a part of the Jake's Law, which require, if you accept the grant monies, to provide additional types of recreation for persons with disabilities that go above and beyond the standard ADA requirements, or disabilities, I should say. And by that I mean some of the requirements that Jake's Law will require for a completely inclusive park is to have shaded areas. Certain individuals have a disability where bright light is detrimental to them in terms of their ability to cope. There's also a requirement that we have a quiet play area. So instead of having just a standard playground, we have to carve out an area and develop it in such a way that it will provide for individuals that would like to have a recreation area, but would rather it be and need it to be in a quiet situation. So that can be done with different types of buffering. There's sound fencing. There are techniques that we can do to decrease noise within the completely inclusive park. It will have recreation components as you normally would for playgrounds, but it also, it's going to include those types of improvements. And then lastly, with a completely inclusive park, we need to do a bathroom upgrade, which would, in essence, provide for additional facilities. There needs to be a separate bathroom for individuals, not with the general public. And so we're going to need to look at the bathroom facilities that we have there and create that within the space that we have, or do a small addition to the current restroom facility. So again, two applications. The first one is the park development application, which is to create 3 additional pickleball courts and improve the walkway along the riverfront, and the completely inclusive park under the Jake's Law, part of the Green Acres program. And I was remiss in not saying that we're actually going to place that recreation component adjacent to the existing playground that's in that area. So with that, I can open it up for questions. Maybe Mayor and Council first.
Does anyone have questions?
Thank you, that was great. I do have a couple of questions, if you don't mind. One of my first ones is whether or not there'll be some type of paved walkway leading directly to the second playground.
That's my question. Are they connected?
For better accessibility for people with wheelchairs or any other type of assisted.
Or is there a connection between the 2 playgrounds?
So the intent is yes, actually both. Right now, what we're graphically showing is a concrete walkway leading from the path to the inclusive park. We can add an additional walkway that can take it to the boardwalk, or take it to, connect the other facilities. It's a concept plan, but it's certainly good feedback that if we want to make more connections to the completely inclusive park, we can do that.
Okay. And I have 2 other questions, if you don't mind. We're taking down trees. Are there any plans to plant more trees?
That's my question too.
So the answer is yes. We do have within our Green Acres program, we have to go out and document trees that are larger than 6 inches DBH, meaning the diameter at breast height. So I believe there's a total of 6 trees in that area. Two or three of them are scrub pines, I would say, maybe scrub's not the right word, they're pines.
Yeah, those beach
I don't want no
pines, those
stress.
beachy pines, I know you're talking about.
Yeah, and the other are deciduous trees, so,
Yeah.
we would include replanting of those trees. The pickleball courts are gonna, they're gonna encroach a little closer to the space, where your pavilion is.
Mhm.
But I do believe that we'll be able to work out the details and not have to do anything further, with the pavilion.
And were there any issues or concerns about flooding, since we are putting a impervious material down?
So, yes, it is in a flood hazard area, but recreation components are a permitted use, if you will, in the flood hazard area. The amount of impervious coverage that we're adding is below the trigger where we're really gonna need to worry about stormwater management. And, quite honestly, when you're in a flood hazard area, you really only have to address water quality. You don't have to address any type of quantity with that, because of the way that the stormwater regs are written, if the water around you is already up, there's really no sense in trying to retain that runoff if you're in a coastal flood area. But water quality, we certainly will look at, and if we need to do some additional improvements that would include encouraging more groundwater recharge, we would include that in the final design.
And my last question, thank you guys. I know, because I had asked about adding kayaks and was told that one of the kayak racks, and was told that one of the major reasons not to was because of the lack of parking over here. Considering we're putting in additional courts, is parking being addressed at all?
Another good question. So, with regards to the parking, it's a community park. While it's not in the center of the community, it does have the ability for people to bike or walk there as well. If one of the comments is maybe we should include or look at adding some additional bike racks or encourage more pedestrian and bike activities. I haven't heard that the park needs additional parking, but if we wanted to create additional parking, we could look at doing that at the site, but it's not currently in the Green Acres application. It could be, but it's not currently in.
I think in general, encouraging non-car transportation is a good idea. That's all for my questions, thank you.
But with all those pickleball people, there's a lot of cars over there, because I have seen it. You
Yeah.
know, on the weekends, it is pretty full
Mhm.
lot over there, for sure. And now the floor of the new playground, that will be a semi-pervious, right? Like that, it's like a rubbery kind of
Like a rubber
material,
tire.
like
Yes.
so.
It would be, it will be a ADA compliant safety surface. There are a few options that we can include in the final design. There's the permeable 5-bar surfaces, and then there's the rubber type surfaces which would shed water.
Okay. And then in terms of structures, like structures for shade, I mean, could you plant trees around that new, or is it actually a hard structure that they want for shade?
A good question. No, they actually encourage trees for shade, but you could also do other types of shade structures, permanent structures, sails are also acceptable, as long as there's an avenue or a component that some of the facility has shade so that it accommodates.
That's all I have.
It looks like there'll be about at least seven new trees, 6 to 8 feet in height. Do you know where those will be placed? Will it be adjacent to these new courts?
So the location of the trees, more than likely, I would encourage to put them over by the inclusive park. But we certainly can look to add trees in any part of this complex. We do have, there is a passive recreation area where, in general, on the east side. But I do think that there are some utilities that run through that area. And so we need to take a look at that as a part of final design. But location of trees, we can work with the borough with regards to where we would want to plant trees. Either replacement trees, or if you wanted to just add additional trees above and beyond, we certainly have that ability.
Wonderful. And also, I'm very excited that we'll have an inclusive park if this goes through. Will there be fencing all around? I know when we originally had the park right next to it, a lot of the parents had an issue with there not being a fence in the back of it. Because the kids have one way to go towards the water and one way to go towards the highway. Will that be fenced in?
Yes, the inclusive park will have fencing around this perimeter.
Any other questions?
Just maybe, I work with I'm the liaison to the Shade Tree Committee, so would it be, would you be working with other committees in town in terms of tree replacement and things like that? I'm sure they would want to be on board.
Yes, and that's encouraged by
Yeah.
the Green Acres program application. They do want us to.
Trees that can live in that area, in that soil, et cetera.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. I'll pass that along.
Okay. Questions from the public? Come on up.
Thank you. Drew Fromkin, South Lake Drive. I wasn't expecting to comment on this, but since I'm sitting here, just two quick things. First of all, I do think parking is an issue. I'm glad that was raised. I think the general age for pickleball around here probably skews a little bit older, just given a lot of the folks I've seen down there. 35 is a really unsafe highway, as we all know, and I think having brought my bicycle down there, it's always a scary event trying to cross over and go along there. So I would just say if that's possible, even if it's just gravel, I think people would appreciate the ability to drive over there instead of trying to get there on foot or on a bicycle. My only other point is knowing this area very well in terms of flooding and everything, and whatever we put in for the boardwalk, whatever should probably be designed to weather a lot of tide and a lot of motion. So it's not ripped out. I'm sure you're thinking about that, but they're
Thank
just
you.
wood planks quite often are just ripped out of there, as you know, on a bad storm or whatever. So
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We are planning on anchoring the boardwalk structure. That's worked into the cost estimates.
Yeah.
So, yes.
dynamite. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? So Mr. Krinkle.
I can speak loud enough to everybody here. Gene Kramer, Fourth Avenue. A quick ride by, there's about 55 parking spaces there, and the existing parking lot. There is one handicapped parking space fairly close to the existing playground, which is properly marked and signed. There is another handicapped parking space about halfway down the length of the parking area, but there's no signage there, and of course then our police department cannot enforce handicap parking regulations. Could you also take a look at the required number of handicapped parking spaces that are required there? A quick look at this book, Accessible Parking in New Jersey. I believe there's 3 handicapped parking spaces that would be required in that parking lot. I understand about the access to the inclusive playground area that should be handicapped, accessible, a good walking surface or a surface that you can navigate with the wheelchair, of course. So that's basically my comment there is actually the existing facility. I don't think there's enough handicap parking. What's there is not enforceable by our law, by the police department. I believe at least one of them has to be van accessible parking lot. The one that's there might be van accessible. I didn't take a close look at that. I did read the environmental assessment here, and I'm glad you did that. And I think you've addressed just about everything. One question here, on page number 3, the site site is generally flat with well-drained soil. The soil on the site consists of OH historic fill type soil. Is OH a soil designation, or is it just old historic fill?
Old historic fill.
Okay, good, thank you. That might be one question. Does this go along to the DEP, this
Yes.
assessment? Okay.
Yeah.
Next paragraph, environmental impact analysis of the proposed park. About halfway through that paragraph, it says the construction of the courts will be such that surface runoff will be directed to grass areas within where natural inflation can occur. You want to change inflation to infiltration?
You got me. Yes, I will.
That's it.
Apologies for autocorrect.
Thank you.
Claire Hanger, 18th and B. To the best of my knowledge, there's one crosswalk with a traffic light,
Yes.
right?
Only one
There's
on L, only one.
On L Street. Just one.
There's another crosswalk on Pine Tree Way, however, there's no lights to it.
We're gonna get a light maybe at some point in time? I know it's probably not part of this, but
It's a state. You would have to make a request to the state to do that.
let's do it.
That's a state.
Okay? Food for thought, I mean, food for safety, or thought for safety, you know? Something like that. Now, this presentation, did it have to be a special presentation? I know we have a deadline to meet and everything, or could this have been like part of a workshop? Or did Grant, this
This
information
had to be,
just come out?
this had to be special because we had to have it done by a certain date.
Right.
And by the time we put everything together, we would not be able to have made the date had we waited to the next meeting. So rather than not be able to apply for it, we decided to have a special meeting.
No, that's a great idea, but maybe in the future we can plan better to try to include it in a workshop.
We're always trying to do these things, but a lot of these things come up at the last minute,
At the last minute.
where we decide that we're gonna do this, and put our heads together and we do it, so.
Okay.
This is actually somewhat of a new requirement. You know, in past years, a Green Acres application would require a public hearing, but in this particular instance, the new program requires a quorum of the governing body to be here. So, and it also required that the documents that we were gonna discuss, or at least the concept, needed to be published on the borough's website 15 days prior.
Okay.
So to hit all of those markers, and we have to submit not only the application, but the meeting minutes
Mhm.
need to be prepared and submitted with the application tomorrow. Okay?
Good luck, April. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I would like to strongly suggest that we have, whether they're flashing lights, signage about playgrounds, signage about crossing. It has been something I've been talking about now for several years. Not just on the dais, but as a resident who lives there, there is a safety concern, and there's also walkway safety concerns in that area. So I'd like us to look into that. Thank you.
I have another suggestion too. If you can gather, a number of residents in the area, they may get more action than we will if they write to the Department of Transportation. We can certainly give them the address to the appropriate individuals, because we're still waiting for the crosswalk on 8th Avenue, which is over a year away, and so I think if more of a public, along with the borough, makes that, it might gain a little more attention.
Yeah, please let me know who it is that we can write to, or who it is that we can advocate to. I mean, I know we've had several emails from folks at the Belmar Housing Authority building, who are just waiting, for another catastrophe to happen. They've been promised this crosswalk, and the fact that, NJDOT has yet to provide it is truly upsetting.
Okay, any other comments, public? Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm not familiar with this program. Hold the microphone. You make funds available for recreation. I'm just wondering, there was an article about these pickleball courts in the Asbury Press and how they've gotten very popular. And in fact, I'm just wondering, are we gonna be one of 580 or 65 municipalities requesting, funds to construct pickleball courts? Is any consideration or is there any, can you do environmental enhancements? I'm not saying in lieu of recreation, but in addition to recreation. We have a piece of property here that faces, I should say, abuts, about 1/3 of the area of Belmar is subaqueous. The borough actually, takes in quite a bit of Shark River Bay. And at one time, there was a group formed actually in Monmouth County of municipalities that surround the Shark River basin to enhance the entire environment, what you would call an estuary enhancement program. How about things like, for instance, not far from here, there's nesting bald eagles. Just up the road, if you took Belmar Boulevard to the Evans area, there's nesting bald eagles located there. And of course, they do forage in Belmar. I've had a couple times during the summer, both osprey and bald eagles perch on my tower. How about, can you request money with these Green Acre programs for environmental enhancements that perhaps could be done with the property? For instance, that almost appears to me to be an ideal location for a nesting platform for raptors. Does the DEP consider those sort of requests under this Green Acres program? In other words, is money available for improving the environment of the property itself?
So there are Green Acres will share in property acquisition. There's also, in this round of funding, there's a program that is entitled stewardship, which to me means, by my interpretation, would be tending to or caring for a property in question. It wasn't considered as a part of this round of funding, but it's certainly something that we could look towards future funding, or even look for funding outside the Green Acres program. I know groups like the American Littoral Society do participate in those types of efforts, if you will. So there are different pockets of money. I think stewardship could fit what you're talking about. Not necessarily for this because it's a developed park, but if there are other areas that the borough would want to improve or enhance to preserve the environment or to promote some species or habitat, that's something that we could look into.
Okay, good. I was just trying to think of something that, I'm sure there's a lot of competition for this, especially after reading the popularity of pickleball courts, actually throughout the state of New Jersey. I was just trying to think of, is there something that makes our proposal or request unique, or would perhaps separate us from the rest of the crowd?
Agreed. I would be hesitant to put nesting poles here for raptors, only because I'm not sure how well they would do here at this location and with the interaction with people. They generally want more quiet areas, but they really like telephone poles, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's face it, the borough's property goes all the way out to Belmar Boulevard, all the way around that curve in the highway there. Unfortunately, this was all constructed when Route 35 and the High Bridge was built. This was, I believe, just a fill area. This is man-made land. Actually, if you look at the property line, actually some of this construction actually goes beyond what the borough owns. But I don't think we have any competition out there. Likewise, and by the way, I did see swans today on when you get onto Belmar Boulevard there. The borough's property goes all the way to
Yeah.
Belmar.
Okay.
Belmar Boulevard. Okay,
All right.
I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to comment that.
Anyone else? Okay, April, I guess we can move on. Or do we have to do anything official at this point?
Nope, then we just gotta do the two resolutions approving the applications. So first resolution is authorizing an application to the State of New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection Green Acres Program for fiscal year 2024 Park Development Grant. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, Councilman Donovan?
Yes.
Councilman McKinney?
Yes.
Mayor Buckafusco?
Yes.
Councilman Rondonero?
Yes.
And then the next resolution is authorizing an application to the State of New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection for Green Acres Program for fiscal year 2024 Jake's Law Grant.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, Councilman Donovan?
Yes.
Councilman McKinney?
Yes.
Mayor Buckafusco?
Yes.
Councilman Rondonero?
Yes.
Okay, so next we'll go to public session on any other items.
Please step up, Mike. State your name and address.
All right. Come on.
Is this open session?
Yes.
Okay. Drew Fromkin, South Lake Drive. I know I have you're putting me on the 5-minute clock there.
I'm not.
I was just
going to monitor it, that's all.
I'm just kidding. Just a little.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, I'm usually very efficient. Tell me if I
4
mess up.
59.
Okay. I'm wasting my time. All right, just a couple quick questions. This fall, we had, last fall, we had a very bad rain event in October. We discussed it at that time. I had requested that perhaps there be a post-mortem of what happened in the areas that got very flooded, and we were gonna look at, what kind of opportunity there is at the lake to drop the lake, how much we can drop the lake, what's happening on the adjacent areas and streets. Has any of that been done? Is there any output on that yet? Or will there be?
I believe Mr. Kane had met with Mr. Musto after that to discuss what we were doing with the lake. If you want to just tell us.
Yeah. Once we get into the winter months, we drop the lake to the lowest ability possible, so the gates open all the way. Unfortunately, the lake could only lower when the tide's going out. On low tide, it goes all the way down A Street to the inlet.
Okay.
So once tide comes up, the lake stops draining. So if the lake is high, it does take a couple tide cycles to lower it, but once we get into the winter season, it's usually down to the max.
So thank you for that. So that's new information, but good information. So because of where the drain empties into into Short River there,
Uh-huh.
if it's below the tide surface, it won't drain.
Right.
It's an interesting fact and somewhat problematic, but
Right.
incorporating that into our thinking is pretty important. That definitely should have been something that might have been thought about at that time, but.
Well, I'm sure from the lake all the way to the inlet, it requires a certain amount of pitch by the time it
Of
gets
course,
down there.
yeah, you have all these things, but maybe a pumping station or something else but anyway, something to be considered in the future, but that's great information. And I was also just, I think, to the point of why that area is flooding and how that Silver Lake is affecting that, and amount of rain total and how much drains into the lake, so we can make predictions on that. But is it also the case that there's a certain level that the lake can only drain down to because of where that outlet is?
Yes, correct.
Okay, all right, so that's another consideration, okay. That'd be a great for maybe the environmental commission or anybody who's looking at the infrastructural question should maybe think about, but thank you, that's really helpful. Just a couple other quick things. I noticed that there's still algae signs all around the lake from this summer, and I don't think we have algae anymore, I sure hope not. But it seems like it might be a good practice to pull things down after the issue has occurred, because people will get desensitized to it when it's actually happening, so just a heads up.
The only question I have is, do we need to
Ask the
let
department.
the DEP know that this is happening? Or do they, but they just gonna assume that we're taking them down at a certain point? Is there any way we can check on that?
Well, they never.
I had the same thought myself, it's like,
They never gave us a time frame or a follow-up to when they come down,
all right,
but we'll find out.
We'll find out.
yeah,
For sure.
yeah, because they're starting to look a little ratty and old, and, you know.
I think the most important thing is people get desensitized to warnings.
Right.
One thing, yeah, anyway, the point is made. Thank you. And then last but not least, I know the Seafood Festival will be coming up shortly. We are all so excited about that, as you can imagine, around the lake.
Mhm.
But I think, in all seriousness, my question is a little bit more about, last year, I know, Mayor, you had mentioned some figures that came out after that was assessed, the financials. I don't know if they're posted, and if they are, if you can point me to those. If not, if there's an opportunity to have the public review those so we understand that impact, that'd be great.
I'm not sure if they're on the April, they're not on ours?
No.
Okay, yeah, we can look into that, that's not
Yeah,
a problem.
just be great, thank you, appreciate that. And last but not least, I know that a couple years ago, there was an assessment of sewer and other prioritization in the town. I understand that another assessment is being made, I don't know if it's on top of that or it's anew, but do we know when we're gonna start to get feedback on the sewer and infrastructure review, and when the public can understand that and maybe start to understand the prioritization of that?
Yeah, we've met at least on 2 occasions, to work on that, and I think we're to the point where we can, we're gonna soon be able to prioritize what items will be attacked first.
Yeah, I'm trying to look around you at Jim.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We've had multiple meetings on that, and our engineers have taken a look at the entire infrastructure and prioritized it, and we're at that point. Jim, and maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that, Jim?
Certainly. So the first part of your question was, were we utilizing information that was already prepared? And the answer is yes. So we're taking that information and then we're adding some overlaying, if you will, some of the additional information with regards to where we have grant funding, where we know we have the worst infiltration issues, where we have lead service lines that need to be replaced. So some of the new information that we're dovetailing into to the old priority list, and that is being refined. It probably will be ready in draft for administration within the next 2 weeks. And that dovetails into the budget process so that the governing body can look at how to budget for this year and then years beyond that. So it's in the works,
Yeah,
and we're building on the information that was previously cataloged and overlaying additional new needs in the overall program.
Okay.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Just to elaborate on it, it's the same approach we took with the marina. Come up with a long-term plan and then put it into a multi-year program.
Okay, well, that's encouraging, and I would just ask perhaps that the public can understand the set of variables that went into the assessment. And I think, Mayor, I watched you before you were mayor, and from a transparency perspective, I think in local settings, sometimes we want to make sure that pet projects aren't the driver. I don't think that's the case, but I think it's helpful for.
There's nothing pet about the.
Well, I know it's a
pet
big.
projects about the water.
I know,
system.
well, I think that's the case, but I'm sure it's the case, but I think my issue is that unless we understand how it's being assessed, and then there are a lot of other factors that are going into it.
The public will know as much as we will
Yeah.
at that point. So
Okay.
they'll they should understand completely how we got to the priorities that we.
Yeah.
That'll be the goal. Everybody it'll be out front, and everyone will see what basically the plan is, not just for this year, but for future years.
Okay, thank you. The last thing I would say to you, sir, although I know I'm supposed to.
Oh, I buzzed about 2 minutes ago, so.
But you have to see me back the other statements. So, the time that was taken by others. But I would just lastly say that we've seen a lot of sewage infiltration going into some of the homes.
We know that.
Okay.
We're
And so
aware of that.
look forward to that being incorporated in the thought
Oh,
process. Thank you.
we're well aware of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Can I have a motion to close the public session and adjourn?
Motion? Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Stop streaming.